is already doing everything that it can to bring them back.
And Professor Singh, I've been speaking to analysts in Moscow, and they are of the opinion that Vladimir Putin's end objective certainly is regime change in Kyiv. When we look at these visuals, it certainly is building up to a full-blown war, which is already taking place, an invasion of this nature, which we haven't seen, against a sovereign republic in decades. If perhaps the last time it was during the Second World War. If the end objective is regime change, how long do you think it is going to last? Maybe months or longer?
Maria, I think Putin's adventurous escalation, I think, alludes to a little bigger objective than just regime change, which could have happened without even any of such escalation taking place. Putin definitely is looking for his own security, for security assurances, or to create some kind of another buffer in case worst case scenario one day Ukraine was to join NATO. So he's created these two independent people's republics which he has recognized. Now regime change could be a subset or an outcome of such an escalation. But regime change was a minor exercise if Putin wanted to achieve that, because there are multiple ways of really disrupting both economy and politics in a neighboring country. And President Putin, coming from KGB background, has enormous understanding of how, without escalating, he could have done that regime change. Here, I think the kind of escalation that we have seen in last 12 or 14 hours, I think objectives are little extraordinary in that sense. And the fact that he's continuing in that indication of escalation. On Saturday now, we know that he's going to overwatch some kind of nuclear missile exercises, which again is kind of alluding to another threshold, which is likely to be sort of indicated as a possibility in coming times. I don't think he intends to escalate to that level, but definitely he's indicating that he's willing to take it as high as that. Whereas NATO forces, NATO has clearly clarified that they have neither any NATO troops in Ukraine, nor they intend to put any NATO troops in Ukraine. So Ukraine's vulnerability to Putin, I think, is very simple. But what we are seeing here is something more complicated. And in that sense, I think India's decision, looking at this continuous indications of escalation, to not just stay and limit ourselves to saying, oh, we should request for a strain on military use of military force, ensuring security of all, beginning of dialogue. India is now proactively kind of engaging itself by talking to President Putin. You saw that during daytime, Indian television gave about 15 to 20 minutes airtime to the Ukrainian ambassador in Delhi. That was another indication of proactive approach. Indian foreign minister is speaking to all the neighboring countries. So focus here, as India has done, traditionally India has done that, focus on damage limitation on the ground, because common citizens, those who are suffering, whether Indian citizens or Ukrainian, that is the focus India wants to bring to limelight.
Yes, and as you were saying, External Affairs Minister will be speaking to who are actually stuck in Ukraine. These are Indian students who were studying in Ukraine and are perhaps now looking at ways to leave the country. And that is the reason why evacuation efforts are being undertaken by the government of India. Professor Singh, I'm going to come back to you and talking about the diplomatic implication and how NATO, UK, US, and other countries are responding to it in some time from now. In fact, in half an hour, the US president will also be addressing the media. The larger question is, besides issuing those warnings and besides announcing that there'll be financial, blockades on Russia, what else can the world do?
I think immediately relief on the ground is something which is required, and for that, I think fundamentally some kind of assurances or concessions from these NATO countries, particularly United States, will have to be made, because within NATO also, there are now countries that believe that some of the security concerns of President Putin are genuine. His methodologies may be questioned. And some of the European major countries like France has been even talking about seeking European solutions for Europe in that sense. So instead of escalation making NATO a further divided house, I think it is time to engage President Putin rather than keep the hype of sanctions. The sanctions, Maria, historically have almost never worked effectively,
That's
even
right.
against smaller countries. And Putin is a strong man, both not worried about the domestic opposition, not worried about neighboring countries creating any nuisance for him. He's also over a period of time collected about $630 billion of foreign exchange. So he obviously was aware of some of these things that could be fallout of a potential escalation that we are noticing now. So, as simply talking about this tough talking, so to say, has not so far delivered on the ground, and I think it has never delivered in last 20 years of Putin's rule in Russia. One after another examples can be given as to how in Moldova, Georgia, Crimea, and now in eastern Ukraine things have happened. Here it is, I think, fundamentally to give some kind of sense of engagement to President Putin is the only thing
Okay,
that
then
could stabilize the situation.
what can be the nature of this engagement